Later in real estate, you try not to get emotional about deals.
Right.
Well, not this deal. When something has only been on the market twice in 100 years,
Right.
you got to take a look at why. So when you spend a little bit of time here like you guys are, you now understand why. It's just absolutely magical. And these canyon walls are something else.
Talk to us about the history of Orchard Canyon.
What I've been told and what I've read, it started in the 20s. It was called Todd's Lodge. And they had a home here, just about 12 acres along Oak Creek. So there's Sedona and then there's Oak Creek Canyon, and Oak Creek runs through it. It's the runoff from Flagstaff, Arizona. The Todds used to just put these cabins out here, these 2 or 3 cabins that they had, and the people would come stay in them, and they just started doing like fried chicken dinners and cook the fish for the people that were doing the fly fishing. It was really small. It started to become very popular, and then they turned it into a resort and hotel. There was a professional broker that sold boutique hotels around the world, and he said it's a huge redevelopment opportunity, but it comes with water rights. And if you know anything about water rights, it's a big deal. So this property predates the state of Arizona, so it was homesteaded and it came with water rights. So that really interested me. I didn't know how I was going to use them, but I knew that at some point that would happen. So
That's a unique thing to have.
Yeah, really unique. It's fairly hard to get. Probably like you, I have a lot of stuff coming in the inbox all the time. But when this came across, it was unique. It was a property that hadn't been on the market for 42 years. And prior to that, another 50 years. So there's only 2 owners in 100 years. You know, my whole life has been value add, value add, value add. When I got here and I met the Garlands, the broker came up in his red Porsche. He was trying to tell me about how I, could create all this value here. But I was watching the body language of Mary Garland. Mark was talking and she was just going like this, And I said, Mark, no disrespect, but I think I'm going to just leave it the way it is. And then all of a sudden Mary's like, because they had a choice of who they wanted to sell to.
She immediately picked you, yeah. As a multifamily investor, hospitality is quite a left turn from what you have typically done. What made you take a closer look at the site?
When you get stuff, sometimes you just open it up and you're like, okay, maybe I can do that. Of course, the risk was not knowing how to run it. It's an operating resort, but I knew it was a heck of a piece of real estate that you don't always get to see. When I drove up, I quickly realized that it's one of those legacy pieces that you have to figure out. I knew this is something that I wanted. This is what I was going to show you. So this whole valley was fruit, apples, peaches, plums. We still have a lot of it on the property, 350 apple trees. And then we turned them into apple cider for the guests. But this is the apple press. This will all be set up. It'll be a full operation, and it actually sorts, polishes, mashes the apples into cider, all natural, non-pasteurized. It's old school.
When the broker got a hold of you, it was actively being marketed, but was it officially listed for sale?
It was on the market. There's only so many people that would be looking for a micro hotel. This was a very niche property. It was large enough where some of the big boys were looking at it for redevelopment. And the ones that were owner-operators, there wasn't a lot of cash flow. In fact, it was negative cash flow. So incredible piece of property, no debt, but whatever they were making each year was just covering the expenses. So it was treading water. And so if you're going to buy it with debt, you're severely negative. So there was really just the corporate guys that were looking at it for redevelopment or somebody who could just figure it out. And that's what I decided to do. There were things that I saw operationally that I thought that we could improve. That was the big thing I had to wrap my mind around. We could increase some of the occupancy. We could increase some of the rates. There were no pictures of the property. There were no guest ratings. They didn't have a website where you could actually book a room online. And the broker, he was pushing the redevelopment because if it doesn't make sense financially, there's no other option. If you're going to try to sell something, it has to be a redevelopment play. But that is not at all what I wanted to do because it's not something you probably should redevelop. It's like sacred ground.
That's right.
You don't want to touch it. You just want to maintain it and then pass it on to the next person.
That's right. Just be a steward of the land.
Yes, that's all. Maybe there are 15 or 17 different varieties of apples, 350 apple trees between the lower and the upper orchard. And Rob, he knows the mix for the right apple cider. Over the years, they figured out, because you have some that are tart, some that are sweet. So the apple cider that we produce here, it's all in Rob's head. Hey, Rob. What's happening? How are you, man?
She's heading back to Colorado. Had to take one for every member of her family.
Of course you do. It's amazing, right?
It's so good. We had it last night.
Isn't that amazing stuff?
Delicious.
Yeah. It's Rob's special blend. He won't tell anybody how you make it.
You've been out here for 27 years. I mean, how have you seen the property change and how's the orchard change?
The main change I've noticed after transitioning to organic practices is it's so cool. You've got birds successfully nesting in the trees now. I've got garter snakes all over the orchard floor. And I think our fertility levels, our biological activity in the soil has been greatly increased.
It's ridiculous how good.
You don't even need to do anything to that.
No.
We replanted 15 Stamen wine saps and 15 old-fashioned Jonathans. So we're retaining the heirloom genetics that this orchard started with, which is really cool. It's important when you think about the tons and tons of fruit that this property has produced and it's gone away. Well, you got to give something back to the soil that produced that. We do soil mineral balancing with trace minerals, and we'll foliar feed with fish and kelp.
This orchard is the anchor of the whole property. It's in the name. It's been here forever. Interesting thing is, to Rob's point, this particularly costs more than you get back, like financially, right? So it's a decision of ownership. You just have to know by the time all that work's done and the harvesting and everything, it costs more money than you get in the juice.
Never breaks even.
Yeah, but it's such an amazing thing. You see the people eat and they walk out here. You know, you just can't find this anywhere.
It's just been great to be able to carry on the apple growing tradition here in Oak Creek Canyon. I tell people we were very fortunate to have these new owners that honored the historical nature of this property and supported the agricultural aspect of it.
So the property was negatively cash flowing when you acquired it, and it's a new asset class.
Yeah.
How do you go about analyzing and evaluating a deal like this and then putting together your game plan for how you're going to make those improvements and move forward?
I felt like I've been doing that my whole life. You don't really get anywhere unless you take a little bit of risk, you know, and some people think this was a lot of risk. And so I didn't know how, but that didn't mean that I couldn't. And that didn't mean I couldn't find people to help me get across the goal line. I realized that the underlying asset was gold. And I also realized that there were some things inside of the asset that were gold, like the water rights. This property predated the state of Arizona, so it came with the water rights. Being a real estate guy, you know that water rights are what everybody calls next century's gold. The way it works is we own the water. That's huge. And so I could bottle it. I could do all kinds of stuff with it. We use it to irrigate. We use it for the resort itself. For the thousands of people that come here every year, they drink it.
Does the aqueduct feed your sprinklers?
Everything.
Yeah.
It's all gravity fed, naturally.
So is your water bill actually zero?
Yeah, because we own the water.
What a hack.
Yeah.
Tired of spending too much money on utilities? Just buy your own water rights.
If you can.
Yeah.
So I'll show you how the water works. So this is it. This comes from Miles.
Do you know when this was all built?
It was over 100 years ago.
Yeah.
It all flows down.
With the elevator?
It creates its own pressure. Pressure in the cabins, pressure for the toilets, pressure for the irrigation. It's all from here. So it's pretty neat. It runs the whole property and it feeds all of this. Just drink right out of that.
Dude, that's really good.
It's perfect.
That's really good. I don't know if I like that or the apple juice more. What was the average daily rate when you took it over, and what is it today?
Yeah, it was $256, I remember specifically, and our occupancy was in the 60s. And that only generated annually about 1.1 to 1.2, and that's what expenses were. And there were some glaring problems just from even a layman. Number one, I noticed that they didn't have a bar. People could actually say, I want a glass of wine, but then they have to go back in the kitchen, open one up, bring out one glass, and everything was kind of manually served like that. Then I noticed that the wine list was low, like in the $20, $30 range, which is fine. That's what a lot of people drink. But I also realized that the clientele wanted the $50 to $100, even a $200 bottle, which is a lot of money, but that's what they wanted. So we expand our whole wine piece. That doesn't sound like much, but that alone added about 100 grand a year in revenue, just the wine and alcohol sales. And then we put a bar in, and that took it to another level because they come here, we have a little happy hour before the dinner, $8, $10 a drink. They get to know each other, then we roll into dinner, and then they get a bottle of wine, and sometimes they take a bottle of wine home. So that's why we have all the wine sitting in the lobby. And then there's like a little mini store there too. They can go grab stuff. So all of those things are just conveniences for the people, because what did they do before? They would go to Whole Foods, go pick up wine and have it in their room or bring it into the dining room. And the only reason I knew that is because I was coming here. And then I felt like we were spending too much money on food because it was a set menu. They would come here and it would be like a 6 or 7 course meal. And there would be a lot of waste. And now, of course, things are changing. The customer wants what they want. Dietary restrictions and all the things that are going on with people's health. You really have to like put that hat on and just embrace that and say, okay, what is it you want? And so that's why we started getting better wines, and that's why we started changing our menu, and that's why we started using more stuff from our organic garden. We try to use everything we can in the garden. Fresh flowers in the rooms, and then most of the food is down this way.
I wish you guys could smell this.
Hi, Eli.
Hey, Ken, how's it going?
Good, man. How are you?
Well, it was kind of a retrofit of neglect. Last season, this was head high in weeds and sunflowers. Previous gardeners had tilled multiple times and caused all kinds of problems. It was a no-till garden for 25 years prior to that. There's microorganisms in the soil, beneficial biology that helps plants grow. When you till, you actually slice and dice these guys up with the tiller. So I had to come in and basically from ground zero, getting the microbes back in the soil in the right ratios to grow the right crops. And it worked out pretty well. Hundreds and hundreds of pounds of squash out of here this year. Squash and zucchini. Multiple varieties of each, trying to restore the minerals to grow the most nutrient-dense food that we can grow for the kitchen so the guests can actually get real flavorful, healthy produce, which you cannot buy in the stores.
So you're germinating everything in here and then it goes outside.
Everything gets started in here.
It's a very interesting shape.
It's more of like a kind of a paste tomato flavor. It's much different.
Tastes like a pepper, like a red pepper.
A little bit. Nice, dude. Yeah, man. Anytime.
Eli, good to meet you, man.
Well, good to meet you, too.
Thanks for showing us your app. What was the purchase price?
So what kind of facilitated it was I had somebody make me a crazy offer on a property that I already owned. So I took the offer, we put it into a 1031 exchange, which is a tax-deferred exchange account. I had around $6 million sitting in that account from that. And then this property, I ended up putting in escrow for $6.5 million. And then I got about another $1 million of cash because I knew that I was going to have to spend $400,000, $500,000 in negative cash flow for the first 2 years. Plus, I also knew that I was going to actually spend money on the CapEx. So really what I was trying to do was minimize my CapEx spend. I literally had a whole spreadsheet. You know, the shoring up of the retaining wall is 80 grand. The road coming in here was 90 grand. These small little things are 5 grand, 7 grand, 8 grand. All that stuff is itemized. So there's a place for it. That's what I raise up front. And then I had the negative carry, you know, which was just operations, had nothing to do with that other. So you get all that money and then you start to deploy the capital. Pretty soon, adding another cabin, renovating the big house, all of a sudden opened up more opportunities for income. And all of it starts to come together after about the end of a year, roughly. I was like, okay, we're heading in the right direction, which I knew we were going to, right? It's just a matter of time. We broke even at the end of the second year, which is what I thought. I was just trying to cover the expenses because I also grew the expenses. And so now, of course, fast forward, you know, we're cash flowing pretty well. So these cabins were actually brought down from the U.S. Forestry Service. So they were original like Forestry Service cabins and reassembled, you know, back in the, you know, who knows, 30s, 40s.
How old are these cabins?
I don't know exactly. I would say they're probably close to 100 years old, all of these. So this was a cabin that we built. This is one of the new ones.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's cool, huh?
That's great, man. You still have the little fire.
Yep. Put the fireplace in, got the wood floor, wood ceiling.
Bed faces the creek.
Bed faces the creek. And then we built a really nice deck out there. And then you can see the upgraded bathrooms with upgraded tile, upgraded showers. So that's eventually where all this is headed.
Yeah.
It's kind of like this. Back here, you got your own little private Idaho, you know, overlooking the creek. So we can do a lot of this at a lot of these properties, just like this. And this is what people want.
Yeah.
They want a little bit of seclusion, but if they want, they can go up to the lodge, go hang out, go get engaged. But this is actually what they're really looking for. I think we spent like 60, 70, 80 grand, you know, redoing this, right? But then it pays it back like that. So as you know, that's how you make money, right? It's value add, it'll pay back itself.
Yep.
And of course, after that, it's just reoccurring cash flow.
Yeah.
You know, so those are the ways that we were able to get the whole thing turned around.
Since 2014, you've added cabins, you've renovated the existing cabins, you've added the bar, you've increased your rates, you've increased your occupancy.
We're up $1 million in revenue. It's now a little over 2 million. That's like 2.1 or 2.2 in top line revenue now. So in 10 years, we were able to do that very, very subtly without anybody being upset. Hardly any of it on the expense side. Actually, my expenses have grown, as they do. And when you want to enhance the customer experience, you got to do that. But we've slowly chipped away at the rates. We've gotten the occupancy better. But to be able to double the revenue in 10 years puts a lot of money on the sidelines to be able to do these big capital projects that you want.
That's right.
Right?
And I would imagine your operating expenses didn't double.
No, the operating expenses did not double. I can do things like add staff cabins. The chef is an expensive employee, and they should be. They're super talented people. So instead of just hiring a chef, you hire the chef and you give them a house. They're invested here. They love it here, year over year over year over year. So this is all the staff housing that we added. We basically have 3 houses here for employees that we want here year-round. What it really does is it makes people stay year over year. It's not necessarily directly hits the bottom line, except for lack of turnover, longevity. And if you can put it in a place like this and still pay them what they would make, or they're like, what? I get that and this? In order for me to really understand this place, I spent a couple of years coming here a lot. You can't look at everything from a budget standpoint. You have to like really be there and really understand like the pulse of the thing. And then and only then can you really make adjustments. There's a heartbeat to every real estate deal, and you actually have to be part of that heartbeat. You can't be sitting out here and then try to figure it out. You can't parachute in and out. After all these years, this is my 10th year, I've never distributed money out of the property.
Really?
0. I never bought it for that. Now, we have lots of money in the bank, but there's so many things I want to do now. Like I want to get it off the grid. I want to have any carbon footprint. I want to do all that stuff just because I want to learn it. You know, try to get this thing to where it's fully sustainable. You know, there's so many things we can do with this property still. Not to raise the rates, but just to try it and have fun with it. When I bought the property, I had talked to my kids a lot. I said, guys, what's the #1 rule for Garland's Lodge? They said, never sell garlands. Yep, that's the rule. So it will pass from me to them, and that's still the rule. So they'll have to pass that on again.